Good afternoon, everyone. We are continuing on these last few chapters where they are drawing lots using the Urim and Thummim to be decided by God who gets what pieces of land. Just by way of recollection, when Moses had led them to conquer the eastern side of the Jordan River, they had given the land to half tribe of Manasseh, Reuben, and Gad. So we have two and a half on the eastern side. Now we have read in the last two chapters, Judah, and then Ephraim, and then Manasseh, the sons of Joseph, which means that Manasseh would have two halves, one on the eastern shore of the Jordan and one on the western shore of the Jordan. In total, there are Judah, Ephraim, Manasseh, Reuben, and Gad. Five tribes have already obtained their lots that they drew from the Urim and Thummim, and God had decided which pieces goes to who. When we begin in chapter 18, we now have everyone congregated at Shiloh. Shiloh is in the land of Ephraim. And they set up the tabernacle of meeting there. And this is the place where they cross the Jordan River and they put the tabernacle there in a more permanent position. And the location is Shiloh. So if you have a chance, you should take a trip to Shiloh to see what they have there. The land was subdued before them. They have conquered the land. Now, when you say they have conquered the land, it means that they have taken all the major cities, but there are other people still hanging around that could be creating disturbances. And so we have read that that Ephraim is supposed to subdue certain tribes in the mountains of Ephraim, but Manasseh would not help. But there remained among the children of Israel 7 tribes which had not received their inheritance. Now, the idea of inheritance would be the land, and they haven't drew lots for them yet. In verse 3, Joshua said to the children of Israel, "How long will you neglect to go and possess the land, take ownership of the land, which Jehovah Elohim, the God of your fathers, have given you? So pick up among yourselves 3 men for each tribe." So there are 7 tribes. So 3 times 7, 21 persons to go. And Joshua will send them, and they will rise and go through the land, survey it. Now in verse 4, the idea of survey actually is to write down what they see. Now this word here is to write, right? Write down according to their inheritance and come back to me. So when they went out to look at the land, they are to document, and they shall divide it into 7 parts because there are 7 tribes left. Judah will remain in their territory on the south. House of Joseph would be both Ephraim and Manasseh, which will be north of Judah. And therefore you shall survey the land in 7 parts, come back, and I may cast lots for you here before the Lord our God. But the Levites have no part. The priesthood is their inheritance. So Gad, Reuben, half tribe of Manasseh was already there, Jordan on the east. Now, what is important for us to realize is this. We have in the south to be defended by Judah. In the east, it's defended by Manasseh. And these were the tribes that were given those lands for a very strategic position to defend. And Ephraim and Manasseh, the second half, occupies a large portion of the central part of the land of Israel. So the men rose, went away. Joshua charged those who went to survey the land, says, go walk through the land, survey it, write it down, and I may cast lots for you here before the Lord, which means before the tabernacle in Shiloh. So remember, Shiloh at this point in time in chapter 18 is now a very important location. Not Jerusalem, because they haven't conquered the land, the city yet. So the men went past through the land, wrote the survey in a book, 7 parts by cities. And you notice we don't know much of the cities. We may identify a few of them. They came to Joshua, and Joshua cast lots for them in Shiloh before the Lord at the tabernacle. And Joshua divided the land according to their divisions. And this is how the land is to be divided. Verse 11, the lot, when they had the land surveyed for this plot in the front, Joshua would draw lots. He rolled the Urim and Thummim, and God decides who gets that piece of land. And it was the children of Benjamin, and their territory came between the children of Judah and Joseph. Now, this is important for us to recall. We have the land, something like this. This would be Jerusalem, but Jerusalem is not conquered yet. We have Ephraim, and we have Judah. And so what we find now is that Benjamin is in between this piece of land. So as we continue, please bear in mind, this is what it means, that the Lord came out between the children of Judah and Joseph. The border on the north began at Jordan. The border went up to the side of Jericho and went through the mountains westward to wilderness of Bet Aven. The border went towards Luz, to the side of Luz, which is Bethel in the south. So basically what we are reading is about this plot of land here. And descended to Ataroth Adar near Lower Bet Horon. Now, all these verses, I'm just going to go through quickly. We do not need to identify them because we can't identify most of them. But you know that piece of land, when you go from the west to the south, they come towards Kiriath Baal, which is Kiriath Yearim. Now, later on, the Ark of the Covenant spent 20 years there. Children in the city of Judah, which you can now see that at the end of the day, there are cities in Judah and there are cities in Ephraim. And this is the west side, and basically telling us the cities will lie in the land of Ephraim and the land of Judah. The south began at Kiriath Yearim and then extends to the waters of Nephtoah. And then he went down to the south to the valley of the son of Hinnom. This is actually the west of the Jerusalem mountains, the hills, right? The valley of Rephaim on the north, descended to the valley of Hinnom, to the side of the Jebusite city, and this would be Jerusalem. On the south, and then to En Rogel. Now, we talk about Jerusalem, but make sure that we are certain at this point in time in the book of Joshua, Jerusalem still belongs to the Jebusite. And so it's called the Jebusite city. Hinnom will be on the west of that city. And then went out to En Shemesh, to Gelilot. All these cities we read in the book of 1 Samuel before the ascent of Adumim. to the stone of Bohan, the son of Reuven, and it passed along the north side of the Arava, which is the forest, and went down to the Arava. The border passed along to Beth Hogla, and the border ended on the north bay of the Salt Sea. The south end of the Jordan was the southern boundary. And so what we find is that you find the land. I wouldn't say you call it land so much. The territory of Benjamin is right sandwiched between Ephraim and Judah. Verse 20, the Jordan was the border on the east side. This was the inheritance of Benjamin, according to its boundaries all around. And so the way they do the survey is they actually depict which cities are included in that boundary. Now, the cities of the tribe of the children of Benjamin was Jericho, Beth Hogla, Emek Keziz, Beth Arava, Zemaraim, Bethel, Avim, Para, Ophrah, Chepa, Ha'amoni, Ophni, Gava. 12 cities with their villages, which means that they are walled. Cities would be walled. Villages are unwalled, and they are around the main city. Then you talk about Gibeon, Ramah, Be'eroth, Mitzpah, Chephriah, Modzah, Rakem, Irpiel, Tarala, Zela, Eleph, Yebus, which is Jerusalem, Gibeath, Kiriath Yearim, 14 cities, and this was the inheritance of Benjamin. So interestingly, you find that, well, is Jerusalem in Judah or in Benjamin? And so there are people who tend to say, well, this is in the area of Benjamin, and it's discussed here. Some maintain that it is co-shared between Judah and Benjamin. But just remember that at this point in time, it really didn't matter, because these were the cities that were in Judah as well as in Ephraim, that the lots fell to Benjamin. We continue to chapter 19 because we need to finish this chapter so that we will get all 12 parcels of land. The second lot is for Simeon. The tribe of the children of Simeon was within the inheritance of the children of Judah. What does that mean? Now, if this was Judah, and we have the inheritance of Benjamin, then Simeon will be somewhere down here, right? This is Benjamin, and this will be Simeon. The reason also is because Judah is the largest portion of land. And so they had their inheritance in Beersheba, that would be right at the south, Molada, Hazar, Shual, Bala, Edzem, Etolat, Betul, Horma, Ziklat. You read some of these, which are the Amalekite towns, right? The Philistine towns, Beth Markaboth, Hazar Susa, Beth Labaoth, Sharuhen, 13 cities and their villages. Remember what I mentioned. And then there are 4, Ain, Rimmon, Ether, and Ashan. They were as far as Baalat, Beer, and Ramah in the south. They were for Simeon. And so Simeon gets this piece of land down south. And the inheritance of the children of Simeon was also included in the share of the children of Judah. Now, what does that mean? It really means that Judah will also be a share, taken or both sharing the same some of these locations as well. So what that would mean is that is why some people say Jerusalem, though it was accorded to Benjamin, it was also co-owned by Judah. For the share of the children of Judah was too much for them. The children of Simeon had their inheritance within the inheritance of that people. Verse 10, the third lot came for Zebulun, and the border of their inheritance was as far as Sarid. Now, one of the things that we will try to analyze, but in many cases it's difficult, mainly because we don't recognize where some of these places might have been. That's our problem, right? Their border went toward the west to Maralah, to Dabashet, and then extend to the east of Yokneam. And from then, Sarid, it went eastward toward the sunrise to the border of Kisloth Tavor. I went out to Debarat, bypassing Yafia. Now, this is Zebulun. And then it passed to Gad Hefer, Ethkadzin, Rimon, to Neah, Hanaton, the valley of Yiftat El, and include Katat, Nahalal, Shimron, Idalah, and Bethlehem. Bethlehem, in this one, this is the second Bethlehem. The first one is in Judah. The second one is in Zebulun. 12 cities with their villages, and the cities and villages. Now that's Zebulun. Now, where do we think we see Zebulun? Would be somewhat like this. If we say that this part here is Manasseh and Ephraim, then Zebulun would be over here. All right. The fourth lot came to Issachar, and the territory went to Jezreel. Jezreel is the plains right below the Mount of Carmel. This is Kesulot, Shunem, Hafarim, Shion, Anaharat, Rabbit, Kishon, Abetz, Remet, En Ganim, En Hadar, Beth Pazetz. And the border reached to Tavor, Shahazimah, Bet Shemesh. The border ended at the Jordan. 16 cities with their villages, and this was the inheritance of the tribe of the children of Issachar. Now, just to clarify, then we would find that we have Zebulun, we have Issachar, we have Ephraim, and we have Manasseh. And then we have Manasseh, then we have Reuben and Gad. So now we're dealing with further north of Issachar, because this is the Jezreel Valley. Mount Carmel is inside here. Mount Tavor is somewhere here. The fifth lot came to the tribe of Asher. According to the families and territory include Helkath, Hali, Beten, Achshaph, Alam-melech, Amad, Mishal. It reached to Mount Carmel westward along the brook of Shihor Lifnat, Bet Dagon, and then it reached to Zebulun, the valley of Yiftach El, and then in the north, Bet Emek, Neiel, Kabul was on the left, Evron, Rehov, Hamon, Cana, down to Greater Sidon, which means that this would be on the western part, that's Asher. And then they turned to Ramah, to the fortified city of Tyre, and the border to Hosah, and ended at the sea by region of Achzif, and also Umar, Afek, Rehob, 22 cities. And so interestingly, you find that it's further up north now, Galilee, and you would find that Asher was somewhere up there. And then we have Issachar, right? We have Zebulun. We have Benjamin and Simeon down south. Now the land of Naphtali would leave us a very large piece, which is all over by the Galilee. The sixth lot came to the children of Naphtali. According to the families, the border began at Haleth and closed the tree of Za'anainim, Adami, Nekev, Yathniel, as far as Lakum, and ended at Jordan. From Haleth, the border extended westward to Aznot Tavor, and then towards Hukkok. It joined Zebulun on the south side, Asher on the west side, and ended at Judah by the Jordan towards the sunrise. The fortified cities are Ziddim, Zer, Hamath, Rakat, Kinneret. Kinneret is the city by the shores of what is called the Lake Kinneret. And so we have many names for the lake. It's called Sea of Galilee, but it is also presently called the Lake of Tiberias. But in those days, it was called the Lake of Kinneret. Then Adama, Ramah, Hadzor, Kadesh, Adriah, and Hadzor, Iron, Migdal El, Horem, Bet Anat, Bet Shemesh, which is below Hadzor, and 19 cities. And that would be for the children of Naphtali. So understand that this really is drawing the plan this way. Naphtali is taking this land here. And so we have Issachar, Asher, and then we have Zebulun, and these were bordering everybody, right? So Naphtali is sitting right here, big piece of land, and you read more of Naphtali in the book of Isaiah. Now, what happened is that now we're going to talk about the land of Dan. Now, Dan is a very weird piece of land. Dan has two pieces, and we are to understand that the first piece is down south, Dan, and the second piece is up here, above Naphtali. So just bear in mind the locations. The seventh lot is for Dan. Then the inheritance of Zorah, Eshtaol, Ir, Shemesh, Sha'alabin, Ayalon, Yetzla, Elon, Timnah, Ekron, El, Teke, Gibbethon, Baalat. You know, some of these are the Philistine towns. Yehud, Bene, Barak, Gath, Rimon, Mir, Yakon, and Rakon near Yopa. Now, all of these, then you would see that they are in the border. Right? They are in the border. If this was Jerusalem, they would be somewhere here. And then we have Yopa. And so this would be Dan. Dan is at the coastal side. What we are now told that the second part is this. The border of the children of Dan went beyond these. Beyond this. Where did they go? They went up north. And then we have the children of Naphtali. And so Dan had a second piece of land. Dan went up to fight against Leshem and took it. And they struck it with the edge of the sword, took possession of it, and dwelt in it. And it is up here, Dan. Today, if you have a chance, you go up there, you'll be visiting Tel Dan. And Leshem is renamed as Dan, after the name of Dan, their father. And so now Dan has two pieces of land, but the northern part would have been inserted in the book of Judges, because this piece of land called Dan up here, that is not the original piece. The original piece is down here. The second piece was where they decided they needed more land and they cannot take anything from their brethren. So they went further north of Naphtali and conquered that place and called it their own. And later on, we will read that they had, during the time of the northern kingdom, they had brought in the golden calf and they were worshiping idols. And that would be in Tel Dan, which would be up north right here. We complete our study of chapter 19. They made an end of dividing the land. As everybody has gotten theirs, the children of Israel gave an inheritance among them to Yehoshua, son of Nun. Now, this is in verse 49 that you need to remember. The name here is not Joshua, but it's Yehoshua. Joshua is really a Greek name, a Greek name. And so this is the son of Nun, not Nun. According to the word of the Lord, they gave him the city which he asked for, Timnath Serah, in the mountains of Ephraim. And he built the city and he dwelt in it. Verse 51, these were the inheritances which Eleazar the priest, Joshua the son of Nun, the heads of the fathers of the tribes of the children of Israel, this is minus Levi, they were divided as an inheritance by lot. Remember, this is decided by God, not by Eleazar. In Shiloh, where the tabernacle is before the Lord, at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. And so they made an end to dividing the country. And with this, we come to the end of the division of the 12 parcels of land that is now given to the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, understand this, that although Levi was taken out, Joseph was split into two with his two children, the two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, making up 12 parcels. It has always got to be 12 parcels because 12 is very significant to God. And so even though the tribe of Levi was moved out, there still must remain 12. Now, why was there 12? Because there were 12 tribes of Israel. But when the Levites were chosen by God for their loyalty in chapter 32 of the book of Exodus, because they stood on God's side and they killed those who bowed down to the golden calf. And from that day onwards, God had in mind to allow the children of Israel to redeem their firstborn. And God wants the tribe of Levi to serve him instead. And so all this while, at the time of the Exodus, it was always 12 tribes, and Levi will always have a share until the golden calf incident. And God decided in the book of Numbers to allow the children of Israel to redeem their firstborn, and God made a formal announcement that the Levites will serve him. And by serving God, serving God would be their portion, their inheritance. And so, what do we do with the 12 pieces of land? Well, Joseph was the favorite child of Jacob, and Israel now has a split of two more tribes coming from Ephraim and Manasseh, which is taken in by Jacob himself. And so that's why in these last 4 chapters, we have to see 12 pieces of land being distributed. The anomaly would be Dan, because Dan decided that they needed more land. The lot given to land wasn't good enough, and they couldn't take the land from anybody else that has already been allocated by God. They went up to take a territory which apparently was not part of the equation, but it became theirs. And so with this, we come to the end of our 2 chapters, 18 and 19, to discuss the last 7 pieces of land to be drawn lots or lottery, that God decided who gets which piece. And so the division of land is crucial because it's decided by God. And at the end of the day, they are to take care of the land. Now, I often tell us this: God's land, God's rules. Now, what's important for us to realize is that although God gave the land to Israel and divided it among themselves in 12 parcels, it nevertheless remains God's land. And God will allow them to stay in the land as long as they are obedient to God. Otherwise, God will take them out of the land by force. So they have to live in the land by God's rules. So with this, we come to the end of our session today.